Hey guys, what's going on? My name's Chris and I'm here to give you some brief thoughts on the newly announced DJI Mavic Air. So if you're a part of any photography groups on Facebook or anything along those lines, you've probably seen that today DJI just announced a new drone called the DJI Mavic Air. It is basically a cross between the DJI Spark and the DJI Mavic Pro. Now, I've been a long time DJI flyer. I've been flying since roughly 2014. I started on the DJI Phantom 2, I believe it was called the Vision, the one with the GoPro hooked up to it. I then upgraded to the DJI Phantom 3 Pro, which I loved. And recently I updated to the DJI Mavic Pro, which is my favorite drone to date. I get a lot of questions when it comes to drones from people of all types, whether they're photographers, non-photographers. Drones are such a cool and fascinating subject and such a cool thing that we have available to us, so I get a lot of questions about them and what my opinions and thoughts are. So before, even last week, if you had asked me what drone should I buy, if you were a brand new user, you weren't familiar with cameras, you weren't familiar with drones, I probably would have said the DJI Spark. I crashed my DJI Phantom 2, I don't know how many times, and back in the day, that thing cost me roughly $3 grand. You can get a Spark now for US price, about $399, so Canadian, roughly 500, something like that, which is fairly inexpensive, especially if you're gonna, use it as training wheels, because for that first year, it will take some getting used to. And now we have the DJI Mavic Air. It's cheesy when they say it, but you know what? I think the Mavic Air, to a degree, is a game changer. So the biggest, most obvious difference is it's small. It's almost half the size of the DJI Mavic Pro, which is insane. The reason why I like this is because I can now put this in my bag and have even more room for other camera accessories that I may need depending on the shoot. They say that it can handle higher winds. I would actually like to see how it handles in those high wind situations. I was recently in Costa Rica with my DJI Mavic Pro during windy season, and the Mavic Pro actually handled the winds very well. Looking back at the footage, it actually came out nice and smooth. So I'm very curious to see how the DJI Mavic Air handles high wind situations because, of course, being a smaller form factor, it is now lighter, which means that wind can push it a lot easier. DJI drones have always had a rough flight time of around 20 minutes, the Mavic having about 26, 27 minutes, versus, I know with my Phantom 3, depending on how cold it was, 15 to 20 minutes, and so on and so forth. So the flight time is pretty standard. The speed, it seems to go pretty fast, so a lot of the times I end up actually just flying slow because it gives a more cinematic feel. Unless you got a wide vista, you can fly fast, but to me, speed is not the utmost importance. A couple of little things I'll mention before we get into the good stuff is it runs off of Wi-Fi over radio frequency, and I think that's terrible, but what are you gonna do? Hand gestures, I don't care. I'll never see myself using these hand gestures ever. I think these hand gestures on the DJI Mavic Air are a cool thing to make yourself feel like a Jedi in front of your friends, but overall, I would never see myself using that. I am a remote person. Now, speaking about the new Mavic Air remote, I actually have a love and a hate relationship with what's going on here. The thing I hate is that they took away that screen. The thing I've been loving during my Mavic Pro flight sessions is having that little infographic screen, giving me as much info as possible. I find myself referring to that screen when it comes to that type of information more often than I do when it comes to looking at my phone. My phone, I'm mostly looking at it as a composition tool versus I get a lot of my flight info from that screen there. So I'm kind of disappointed they took that out. Now, what I love what they did with the remote is the joysticks. One of the things that Mavic Pro pilots have had an issue with is the joysticks, just because they're kind of obtrusive. They stick out. They didn't come with a kind of holder. You can buy a holder on Amazon for like 10-ish bucks, if not more. Not a huge fan of that. I wish they shipped with something like that, very similar to how they ship with gimbal holders. So what I love about the Mavic Air is that you can actually unscrew the joysticks and they have a little storage compartment on the bottom side of the remote. That's amazing. Love that. They say the DJI Mavic Air flies quieter. Again, not a huge deal. If you've ever heard a DJI drone fly before, you know it kind of sounds like a swarm of bees flying around. And they said the same thing about the Mavic Pro, that it was quieter than the Phantom. I personally don't hear an audible difference. I think no matter what, it's always gonna sound like a swarm of bees, and depending on your environment, most people won't even hear it. Now, here's why I think the DJI Mavic Air is a game changer. The specs actually match those of the Mavic Pro. The Mavic Pro, aka the better drone, the more expensive drone, has only a write speed of 60 megabits per second. The DJI Mavic Air writes at 100 megabits per second shooting in 4K. Same sensor as the Mavic Pro. That's insane that a smaller drone, almost half the size of the Mavic Pro, has a better write speed. That's awesome. That's what's making me consider the Mavic Air. So not only does it have that 3-axis gimbal with the same camera settings and everything like that, but it actually has some really cool new modes with it as well. One of the modes being boomerang. This is actually the mode I can see myself using the most. I shoot a lot of corporate stuff, a lot of narrative stuff, a lot of whatever it is. I can see myself using boomerang mode quite a bit. You also have active track where it can track 2 things. Now I'm very curious to see how that works. The example they show in their professional video is 2 people running alongside each other. So of course that's gonna track properly, but I'm very curious to see how it works in real life. I think just tracking 2 things is gonna be a pain in the ass. I don't know who would use that. The next thing is asteroid mode. I don't really see how this plays into anything other than a cool Facebook post. I'd be curious to see how it integrates into a video. But as of right now, it just looks like a cool way to take a really cool picture, basically. Can you put that into a video? I'm very curious to see how that works. And the last and probably one of the bigger selling features of the camera as well on the DJI Mavic Air is the 32 megapixel sphere panoramic mode. It's gonna take a bunch of photos, build it all together into this panoramic mode. I believe you can export it just so it's a nice long panorama, but you can also look at it similar to how you look at 360 photos, where you can look around the area basically. But it combines all that data to be a 32 megapixel image. That's amazing, that's awesome. And a couple of final thoughts here. Another thing I like is that we've upgraded the slow mode to 1080p. On the Mavic Pro, you can shoot up to 120 frames per second at 720p versus the Mavic Air, you're now up to 1080. Awesome upgrade there. What I also like about the Mavic Air is it actually has 8 gigabytes internal storage. That's pretty awesome. Let's say I want to go on a trip and I don't want to bring a bunch of stuff, just my Mavic Air and my remote. I put in the biggest micro SD card I can, but I always like having that insurance of that 8 gigabyte backup storage, you know, just in case I shoot too much footage or I shoot too many photos, whatever it is, that extra 8 gigs is awesome. Now the price is $799 USD. The DJI Spark is currently $399 USD. So that's a difference of $400 US dollars. The Mavic Pro is listed for $999, so basically $1,000 USD. So who would I recommend this drone to? So people are starting to upload footage that's not the corporate footage. Anytime a company releases a product, you can never trust your corporate footage just because they're always gonna post the best of the best that their new product can push out. I wanna see real world user experience. I actually recorded an earlier version of this video, went to check it out, had a few extra things to say, and then happened to also watch Casey's video. And Casey's footage so far is the only footage I've seen that was used by a quote unquote real world user. But based on the footage he shows, it's actually very hit or miss. So that's why I want to see more video professionals do it. If you've followed Casey, you know that he doesn't focus too heavily on cameras and visuals. He just basically wants to make sure it's recording. So I want to know, is there going to be ND filters for the Mavic Air? Because that's a game changer in my opinion. But overall, based on his footage, he does some side-by-sides, which I'll cut to now. In some shots, I think the DJI Mavic Air looks better than the Mavic Pro. But then I would say vice versa for other shots. So that's why I'm more curious to see other users' footage to see what you can pump out of that thing. But overall, I love where DJI is going. Again, based on what I've seen through Casey's footage, I don't see myself making the upgrade, but mostly because we're still unsure yet what the image quality looks like. A couple weeks from now, you can ask me and I'll be like, oh, I already sold my Mavic Pro so I can get the Mavic Air. Again, I love the small form factor, but that image quality has to be there. So if you're looking to buy a drone, I'd wait out a couple weeks, see how this thing plays out, because I think this is a perfect middle ground for photographers looking to get into drones, as well as people who aren't photographers also looking to get into drones. So there are my thoughts. Let me know what your thoughts are on the Mavic Air. Keep an eye out on this channel. I have more videos coming in the next couple of months. That's one of my goals, is to start uploading more regularly on YouTube. So if you like this video and you want to see more camera related stuff, tutorial related stuff, and if you have any questions about cameras, drones, whatever it is, feel free to shoot me a message. Follow me on Instagram here. That's probably my most used social media platform. Thanks guys, have a good one.